Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Barrett, a senior advisor for Route 50. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss the challenges that face states and local governments brought on by the Great Resignation and a whole variety of the other things that have affected human resources, and particularly in the public sector. We'll be exploring what state and local leaders are doing to excel in recruiting and retaining talent despite these challenges. So today, I'm really excited about this group. I'm joined by a wonderful group of leaders in the space. Everyone here I know well. I've bothered each and every one on countless occasions for articles that we're doing with one of them, Bob Lavinia, all the way back to the 1990s. That they're all experts in the field and they all, do a wonderful job. So first we've got Jennifer Fairweather. She's Chief Human Resources Officer of Jefferson County, Colorado. And she's the current president of the International Public Management Association for Human Resources, that's IPMAHR. She's worked in local government for the past 24 years and has over 10 years of prior experience in the private sector. And Casey Osterkamp is director of the Division of Personnel for the state of Missouri. So we have a large county and a state. And prior to joining the state, she served in the United States Navy, worked for IBM and the University of Missouri. And she's currently on the executive committee of the National Association of State Personnel Executives. And now Bob Lavinia is the director of the Institute of Public Sector Employee Engagement at CPS HR Consulting. As I said before, my colleague and husband, Rich Green, and I have known him for decades, starting probably in like 1991, when he was director of the state of Wisconsin Merit System. Since then, he has directed the HR for the University of Wisconsin, and has been a key player in the Partnership for Public Service. So thank you all for being here today. And before we get going on the discussion, there were just a couple of things that I wanted to say. Rich and I have been working on an article at Route 50 lately that, and we've done a number of articles about hiring, and what has really kind of, we've been using the word crisis because it just seems quite extreme to us based on what we've seen in the past. In the most recent article or column that we've done, we were looking at data from a technology company, NeoGov, and they spotted a real decline in the number of applicants for open positions. And this is occurring at the same time that the open positions are going up because of turnover. So we've got a lot of twin problems here. And this, I should say, this is also a difficult situation for the private sector, and the private sector has much more opportunity to raise salaries. So there's a compensation battle going on at the same time. Anyway, so I wanted to start with one of the two big issues. People are leaving their jobs. The other big issue is that people aren't applying for jobs. And so let's start with the people are leaving. So I want to give the first question to Bob. And I want your impression for how big the problem is now and why it has developed the way it has.
Sure, Catherine, thanks very much. It's great to be with you. And thanks, Catherine, for revealing just how old I am. So,
and me too.
So sure, it's a problem. And you provided some data from NeoGov. BLS data, 4 million people quitting jobs across the US in April. It's like 11 months in a row where we've had record-setting quits. 914,000 vacancies in state and local government alone in April, and only 331,000 hires. So as you suggest, Catherine, we're falling behind in state and local government. And when I speak about this stuff, I always ask the attendees whether or not their organizations and the government folks are experiencing challenges attracting and retaining talent. And every time, almost everyone raises their hand. So it is a national problem. And, the question becomes, where are all these people going? And why are they leaving? The short answer is they're going for better jobs. Now, sure, retirements are up some, but only a small minority of employees are actually leaving the workforce. There's a great article in the New York Times sharing some research a couple of weeks ago. The rest are moving on or up, depending upon what up means. Some cases are taking higher paying jobs, especially those in low wage jobs, and pay is important, especially if it's low. But it's not the primary factor about why people are changing jobs. We do a lot of employee engagement surveys at the Institute, and we regularly find that pay is not a key driver of employee engagement and commitment. It's about other things. It's about the work environment. It's about the organization's ability to create a high level of employee engagement, enabling employees to have that strong connection between the work they do and the mission of the organization. Engagement drives performance. And also, one survey showed that high engagement organizations have 45% lower turnover than low engagement organizations, the single biggest differentiator. And, there's no one size fits all solution to building engagement and retention. You have to know what's going on in your workforce before you can take action. One of the ways, and this is kind of a trendy phrase, is to build a positive employee experience, to ensure that all the interactions an employee has with the employer are positive, sometimes described as moments that matter, in the entire employee life cycle: recruiting and hiring, onboarding, supervision, training and development, recognition, and so on, from hire to retire. Someone once described it as from cradle to grave, but I don't like that so much. And research shows that organizations that have created a positive employee experience are 5 times more likely to retain their employees. So this stuff really matters. And it's not just HR stuff, it's leadership and culture stuff. You also need to understand turnover. In most organizations, they know what the overall turnover rate is, but you got to drill down on the data to understand who's leaving and why. So who are you losing? Are you losing your top performers? Are you losing new hires, people in specific demographic groups, roles, units, occupations, pay levels? And why are they leaving? Exit interviews, stay interviews, focus groups. We have a question in our survey: are you thinking about leaving in the next year or not? To allow organizations to be a little proactive about retention. And then, of course, ask employees how they feel. Employees want to be heard, and employers need to listen and then take action. I mentioned engagement as a key driver of performance and retention, but how else do we know how employees are feeling about the experience unless we ask them directly to tell us what they feel good about, that we can maintain, and what they don't feel so good about, that we can improve. We're seeing public sector organizations across the country doing this, and we're getting high response rates. People want to be heard. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to interrupt you because you've said so much in a short time. But I wanted to get the reaction of Casey and Jennifer to what you said. And also, what you're talking about engagement and organizational culture, maybe in some cases easier to say than to do. But I'm
maybe
really
in most cases, Catherine.
Yeah. So I'm curious about their experiences with, how important that engagement culture aspect is in lowering turnover. Have you succeeded in lowering turnover by working on that? And I guess the question is mostly whether you see an effect of what you're doing. Maybe Jennifer, go first.
I'm sure. And thank you, Catherine, for having me. And thank you for your comments, Bob. You're spot on. We've been doing engagement, and we call them employee experience surveys in Jefferson County for 12 years now. And so the last one we did earlier this year, 86% of our employees said they've had a positive experience. And we asked, that's just one question out of a myriad of questions. So yes, it does make an impact, and we do exit interviews. But still, this is different. I think that the work we've done around our culture, around our leadership development, around our emphasis on work-life integration. I see that in exits. I see, I've had conversations with employees during this time who've said, I got this great opportunity with another organization, but I'm going to stay because why? I have a great relationship with my supervisor, or why? I appreciate the 4-day work week you have in Jefferson County, or I appreciate that we're flexible and we are allowing ongoing, remote and hybrid work. But it's still been a challenge. And I think what's a little bit different in these times I see is that because the private sector has been able to increase their compensation so dramatically during this time, and especially I'm in the Denver metro area, it's very expensive to live here. And we're kind of in that top 5 of cities that are expensive, and the housing is very difficult and challenging. For some employees, it almost is hard to not make that choice, to make a jump to a culture that might not be better, because they're getting $10,000 and $20,000 pay increases, sometimes $30,000, and it can impact, the things that they need to do, for their family. So I'm happy that it's always been a focus for us, because I'm afraid if it hadn't, what would our turnover be if we didn't focus on employee engagement and our culture and developing leaders and trying to live our values. But even with that, I think these times are just still challenging.
Yeah, is your turnover still going up, or are you beginning to see it going down at all?
We're not beginning to see it go down yet. It's still, so normally we're hovering like 10 to 12, and last year we were at 20, and we're on pace for 20 so far this year. There are still a ton of jobs being posted in at least the market that I am in, both public and private sector. And so we're still seeing people rotate. We're also seeing people want to change careers. Some of the roles that people sign up for are difficult jobs, and they've been even more difficult with COVID. As an example, public health. People didn't even know they existed often in the community. Now they've been front and center. They've gotten death threats. That's not something a lot of people thought they would get as a public health expert. Social casework has been even more challenging with COVID, more cases, more things going on in families. And so we're also finding for some people that they loved their career. They thought it would be a lifelong career, and law enforcement as well, but now they're rethinking maybe those choices and looking to do something different.
So this brings up a really interesting point, because we've always seen the great variety in government jobs as a real advantage for government. Are you making any efforts to keep the people who need to change careers within your system, but with different opportunities?
We are, and we actually did an internal kind of job fair to show people there are other things you might be able to do within the organization. And so, yes, we're trying to make those efforts that, yes, you could pivot from this career and maybe pivot to something else. Because you're right, that's the beauty of a lot of our organizations, is we pretty much offer everything anyone could ever want to do. I think for some people, there's also there's been so much public scrutiny around government now, and we get lumped in with government, federal, state, local, just government. And we've heard from some of our employees that they're looking for a change just outside of government, in addition to maybe making a change. They're feeling, there's a feeling that the role they have isn't looked upon as making a difference as favorable as it had been, that there's an underappreciation, not from inside the organization, but from the community. And I think those are things we're also going to have to work towards as, a sector, in how we frame the work that people do, and build back some of that community engagement, so that people view this as a job, because they came to make a difference and that's what they want. But when they feel like there's a disconnect there, that's something we're going to have to work on. That's even another challenge on top of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, very, very good points. Casey, you're in a different position, because you've been in Missouri for in your position for how many years? 4 years, or?
I've been here for just over 3 years. And I
Yeah,
think it's interesting to note the state of Missouri, very different from Jefferson County experience in that we are in Jefferson City, Missouri, a town of just over 40,000 people. And so recruitment of expertise in different areas is difficult in and of itself because we have a small population and it can be difficult to get people to necessarily move to Jefferson City, Missouri. And so we've always had a recruitment challenge for Jefferson City-based locations. Obviously, we have offices, corrections facilities, social services offices all around the state. But our turnover is upwards of 29% right now. It is, and it has been on an upswing. I'm looking at the data at this screen right now, ever since March of 2020, when people were nervous about what the pandemic would mean for them. Since then, it's been on an upward trajectory. And we do the deep, I loved Bob's suggestion of looking at the data more specifically to understand who is leaving and why they're leaving. Just to highlight our 3 highest percentage positions across all 16 executive departments, the support care roles in social services, health and senior services, veterans homes, those people who are really doing the down and dirty support work in homes, offering that assistance of healthcare throughout the pandemic, but then also call center positions have incredibly high turnover because of the unique stress that is put upon those folks during COVID, not even the healthcare, but think about the revenue folks or the unemployment folks who are dealing with intense phone conversations with very upset citizens and the mental health struggles that they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis and the burnout. And then the third level are the food service folks in our facilities, whether it's corrections or social services, because those folks are not well paid and they could do easier work in easier environments at fast food service places for significantly more, and those places are also offering hiring incentives. And then in addition, you add to that with our high turnover, that means that mandatory overtime comes into play. And so it's not that these people necessarily they do want to be paid more, they just want to be able to go home at night. And so unique challenges that face the state of Missouri. But we're hoping that some of the things that we have put into place recently will help us. But to be honest, Catherine, specifically to your question, we have not seen anything work yet. Our turnover numbers continue to go up and up.
yeah. Oh, okay. So back to you. This is so interesting. And while some of what you say about Missouri is unique, Jefferson City puts you in a more difficult position. But those high stress jobs are a problem throughout in filling them and keeping people in them. And so Bob, when you talk about engagement and the importance of a good culture, and then you have low paid employees in very high stress jobs that in many ways are kind of thankless. Based on what Jennifer is saying, people are not appreciating what they do. Is there a solution?
Well, if I had an easy solution to that, Catherine, I'd be an extremely wealthy person, and I'm not. As I mentioned when you asked me the first question, if pay is an issue, we need to fix it. And I was at a session a couple of weeks ago where someone just like you, Casey, said, I have people who are leaving because they can make more money at McDonald's and the jobs are all easier. Well, that's really unconscionable. We shouldn't be competing with McDonald's for talent. So if pay is an issue, we need to fix it. We also need to emphasize benefits. Benefits still are pretty good in the public sector. But, overall, I think we need to do a better job of branding. Like Jennifer said, people have such a negative view of government. They don't really appreciate the ways in which government positively affects the people that we serve. And my own organization is a government agency. We do a lousy job of branding. We do a lousy job of posting and praying that people are going to apply for our jobs. vacancy ads on Indeed look like position descriptions. I mean, who wants to take a job with 25 things listing what you're going to do? I saw a position description that said the incumbent, we like to use that word, must be able to sit, stand, reach, grab. That's not a very exciting job. So I think we need to build a brand. I think we need to fix pay if pay needs to be fixed, but also that connection between the work I do and the mission of the organization and the value of work. Casey, I have a follow-up question. You mentioned Jefferson City. I live in Madison, state government, and we're not a very big city either, but state agencies here are more and more allowing employees who previously would work here in Madison to work anywhere else around the state. And that is also helping with the comp issues, because it's a lot cheaper to live in Ashland, Wisconsin than it is to live in Madison. Are you able to do that in the state of Missouri as well?
We are flexing our muscles in that area. Right now, every department can have up to 20% of their workforce working remotely. It does help that we have offices around the state, because we do currently ask, to the culture piece that we've been talking about, all team members need to come into the office one day a week, whatever that office location is. Another point, I don't mean to take us in a slightly different direction, but Bob, your point about listening to team members, I think we do quarterly pulse surveys of our team members. And I did want to include the point, we've been really focused on taking action based on the data, because it's not enough to listen. You actually have to do something and then tell them what you did, so that they are willing to participate and continue to talk. And so we have 45,000 folks that work for the state of Missouri, huge population. And so building a culture across that population can be very difficult. And so we've really tried to impress upon departments to lean into the mission, the find your why, and connect that with the engagement piece to build the culture.
And we also often find that the key to engagement is the relationship between the individual employee and the supervisor, manager. People don't quit jobs, they quit their bosses.
Yep.
Yeah, and we just did, I can't remember the percentage, but the Gallup did a poll, or probably has done a number of polls, that had found that bad supervisors are one of the primary reasons that people leave jobs.
And all of it, we could probably spend an hour talking about our own experiences.
Yeah. I should mention here that this whole issue of hybrid work, or a more mobile workforce, is going to be the session after lunch, and is being moderated by Rich Green, my colleague and husband. So that should be really interesting too. Can we come back to compensation for a second? What you have all said makes me think that some of what needs to be done can't be done by the HR departments, needs really to be done by the decision makers, the elected officials, who have to realize the effect that the current situation is not only having on employees and managers, but also on services to citizens. Are you seeing that message get across?
I can speak. We are seeing that message get across, especially, I've dialogued with you before. When Road and Bridge couldn't fill jobs, it's cheap. They can get a higher paying job at Amazon warehouse with their skills than doing road work. And in the snow season, they couldn't plow all the roads because we couldn't fill all the positions. So, those messages resonate. I think what's difficult is it takes sometimes local government, depending especially on your finances, a bit longer to pull the trigger on getting those changes through. And I think that's something we have to work on with our elected leaders and our finances. How can we be a bit more agile in that space? Because, as turnover was rising, we saw the private sector quickly implement, we're going to do hiring bonuses, we're going to raise pay. They were very quick to do it. And we're seeing it, but we're still going through the motions of trying to figure out how to shift resources. And I get it, it's very complex. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think that's one thing that gets us behind, is that sometimes we can't do some things as quick. Now, we were able to do hiring bonuses quickly for departments who had that resource, but for other things like moving our pay ranges and those bigger picture compensation strategies, it just takes so long sometimes to get there, that by the time we get there, we feel like we're already behind.
Yeah. Bob, are you seeing more of an understanding? I know you speak pretty widely. Are you seeing an understanding of this among people who make the decisions?
I think so. What we're seeing is an explosion in compensation studies across the country. The understanding that, as Jennifer said, we need to take a look holistically at our compensation and adjust pay ranges, maybe move from paying for activities and time and attendance to results and outcomes. So we're seeing a lot of that. I think it's important for us in HR, as Jennifer said, to make the business case to leaders that, it's not good that we have a lot of vacancies, even though you might be saving money, because it's affecting our ability to deliver services. A small example, it was on the national news. I think it was the city of Philadelphia can't hire lifeguards for city pools. And the pools are either not opening or opening with very restricted hours. So if elected leaders can see and feel that pain, they're going to be more likely to provide the resources that Jennifer suggests we need.
Yeah, I know that was also true. I know Bob and we were in Austin recently for the Government Finance Officers Association conference, but that Austin had been closing down swimming pools because they couldn't keep them operating during the summer.
And that's more pressure on elected officials than we in HR can bring.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Can we talk about just the hiring process for a little bit? I know we've been talking for a long time. I mean, it's whizzing by, but I know we don't have a whole lot more time. But just the hiring process, we've been writing about a survey of job applicants, and their complaints about what it's like to apply for government jobs are even to go on and on and on, all about how slow it is, how there's not enough communication, how complex the application process is. Can you talk, and Casey, why don't you go first this time, but just talk a little bit about what you can do about that reputation and what you are doing about, speed of hiring and communicate and better communication with job applicants.
Sure. So prior to 2020, when we launched our comprehensive application tracking system, our new mocareers.mo.gov, there were over 65 different ways that you could enter into state government. Some paper, some fax, some email, everything was different. And there was it was not easy to apply for a state job. And so we launched our common application platform, and we have really been focused on time to fill. And so our goal is 45 days from posting to offer accepted. Some departments are meeting that and knocking it out of the park. On average, we are in the high 50s of time to fill, which is much better than where we were to begin with. Some of the things that we're leveraging the technology for are text messaging, and we're looking at more in different ways to communicate with people along the way and let them know one way or the other if they receive the position, to try to encourage them to apply for other positions. We've also been having hiring events more places, going to block parties or holding different events in different locations where we're really struggling to attract talent. And then excitingly doing on-the-spot conditional offers so that people can come to a situation. We even offer food and games for their kids while they're talking to us, and then offer them a job on the spot. And we've seen great success in that for some of our highest turnover roles.
And Jennifer, what about you?
Yeah, this has been a focus for us for a few years, even before COVID. So our time to fill before the pandemic was 56 days, and that was from start to when the person started. So kind of adding 2 weeks onto kind of the one you're talking about. So we felt really good about that. During this time, it's escalated to an average of over like 75 days. And so, and a lot of that is because the position is just sitting vacant. We used to, some jobs we would post, we would get 200 applicants. Now we get 10. So there's definitely a shift for us, but we have a great applicant tracking system that feeds into our HCM. So it moves right into onboard, and it has the communication tools within it. We don't have a lot of those hurdles. You know, we have a few supplemental questions. We really try to keep it streamlined, you know, and not add a lot of complexities to it. You know, you can upload your resume, you know, and all of those things. I think, you know, what we need to get back to is exactly what Casey talked to. We used to do some hiring events where we would do on-site interviews and things like that. It's been a challenge for us to get back to that, not just because of COVID and we have so many remote workers, but also I think some of our departments are so short-staffed that when we talk to leaders about, do you want to help us put together a hiring event? You know, it's like, oh my gosh, we can barely get our work done. But those are the kinds of things that we want to get back into is, you know, getting out there and being at some of the community events and just and talking to candidates and getting them excited about our culture. And then, you know, I think we're lucky we have a system that can really streamline that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, the HR departments are as short-staffed as everybody else. Bob, are you finding that
Yeah,
to be
I may add
true?
a footnote on that, and that is, you know, what happens internally affects how people outside the organization view the organization. So if you go to Indeed or Glassdoor and you look at vacancy announcement, right next to the title of the job will be employee reviews of that organization. And you can bet that people are looking at those reviews before they decide whether to apply for the job. And if you've got a bunch of one-star reviews, like run as fast and as far as you can from this place, you want to have 5-star reviews. So you need to also understand what people's perception is of the organization, including on some of these big job boards.
Which comes right back to the point you started with about the mood of the workforce, the culture of the workforce, and the engagement level, so that you have better reviews that people are seeing who are applying for jobs.
Right.
We only have a couple more minutes. Could you each kind of give, if you think about a new HR executive starting at a local government or a state government faced with this issue, what's the one thing that you would tell them that they should do first? Casey?
Ask why, in terms of why we are doing the processes that we are currently doing, to try to be creative, to do new and different things.
That's great. Jennifer?
Not just old.
Oh, Casey, go. You had something else, Casey. Okay, Jennifer?
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you went first. That's a hard question. I guess to be a little bit different, I would say see what data you can get to glean, you know, exactly some of the things Bob was talking about, though. Who's leaving? Why are they leaving? How is that compared to different years? What type of internal engagement metrics do you have from surveys or stay interviews? What kind of training are you doing to develop? What does your presence look like on social media sites, on the Indeeds, on the Glassdoors, and you know, and just try to put together kind of a business case and a strategy from all angles of how, you know, you want to get at making any positive shifts that you can to impact turnover and retention.
Yeah, well, Casey and Jennifer, both great points. And Bob?
Data.
Yeah.
You know, Jennifer put it quite well. We tell actually new leaders, we tell them this is the perfect time for you to reach out to your workforce, find out what your employees think is working and what isn't working. And there's no political downside for a new leader. You know, you don't have to, you don't own the problems, but you can own the solutions. So you can't prescribe a solution without understanding the condition, whether it's turnover data, employee engagement data. We need to make evidence-based decisions.
Another terrific point. And that's all the time we have. I feel like we could go on talking for a long time, but we got to stop. So thank you, Jennifer, Bob, and Casey for sharing the work your organizations are doing and your thoughts. And thanks to everybody for joining us today for the conversation. So we are now going to take a break for lunch and we'll reconvene in an hour to discuss, as I said, normalizing hybrid work. And that's with Rich Green. So come back at 1:40, and that's Eastern time, as we continue our state of the state local government workforce summit. And for Route 50, I'm Catherine Barrett, and take care.